Hi, good evening, everyone. Tonight, I want you to share this link. I want you to like this video so that we can get as many people in the world to see this content. As someone that understands nuclear energy, that understands nuclear weapons, I will bring you some expert advice. I will give you some insights into what is happening in the world at the moment. I want to give you some understanding of why certain words are being used across mainstream media right now and what they are actually preparing the people for and what you can do to mitigate any eventuality. So, welcome to this live stream. I hope we can get many people from the public into the stream and that we will have a large audience in the end and that many people will watch this. So because this is YouTube, we need to use the algorithms to do so. So I need you to share this link. And if the people like this video, we can get as many people as possible to watch. This is a topic that I'm an expert in. And my advice, you can use it, you can lose it, you can share it with other people, but it's going to be accurate advice based on facts and what I see playing out in the public domain right now. So good evening to all of you. I see there's a lot of members here. I put out the links in my Telegram channel as well as on Facebook. I put out the link in the community tab for the membership for all the subscribers on the channel. So this is open to the public. And I see we have over 150 people watching now. I hope this can increase greatly. This is a very important topic, because you will hear the word tactical nuke everywhere right now. I think a lot of people are afraid of what that means, and you should be afraid. And I will go into quite a bit of detail. I don't want to keep you too long, but I will take as long as it takes for you to understand the threat, how real it could be, how soon it could happen, and why I think it is possible this year. So please invite as many people to the stream as possible. Last time we had over 200 people in the live stream. Hopefully we can get over 500 people in the stream, even more. Maybe we can set a new record. So welcome to all of you. So at the moment, you will see in the mainstream media all over the world, people being prepared for the use of a tactical nuclear weapon. And you will see in the thumbnail for this video that the smallest nuclear weapon that the US actually prepared, you will see in that picture, and you will see it's tiny. It's about this long and this big. Now, the Russians a long time ago claimed that they created suitcase nuclear weapons. So this is a suitcase with a nuclear weapon inside that you could carry it into any place, and any nuclear weapon of a size like that would be called a tactical nuclear weapon, and you could cause a lot of damage with it. And I'll get into the details of the kind of damage you can create, why you would use something like that, why they're calling it tactical nukes, why Putin might use a tactical nuke, and to understand what that means. Because anyone could make a nuclear weapon explode in the world right now, and it will be Putin's fault. So you need to also understand the narrative. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't be him doing it. I'm just laying the background out for you. So I will explain the difference in the international terms between a tactical nuke and a nuclear war, why they're using those terms. And it's important for you to understand this, because by using the term tactical nuke, they are making excuses for not using nuclear weapons against such a threat. And this is what people need to understand. So you could literally use tactical nukes in various places around the world without a full-scale nuclear war breaking out. And this should be very concerning. I will later talk about the effects of using a tactical nuclear weapon. I will speak about radiation poisoning and what you can do to mitigate that, if that should influence you wherever you are in the world. So this video is open to people from around the world, and I hope you'll share it around the world. And I really want to thank you for being a part of this community, and we need to grow this community when it comes to the threat of nuclear weapons being used. It's a global threat, and all of us are part of that concern. Fortunately, where I am in South Africa, the concern might be a lot less, but be very careful. Tactically, there can be many reasons why tactical nuclear weapons can be used in various places in the world, to get what I put out before in a live stream with the members, an international state of emergency declared based on a nuclear threat. I'll repeat that. An international, just like with COVID-19, international lockdowns happen, international state of emergency is being declared by global governments due to nuclear threats, in which case militaries will control countries and you will have all your freedoms removed. And of course, this fight is all about freedom and taking away the freedom of ordinary citizens like you and me. It's about nothing else. So welcome to you and thanks for being a part of the stream. Please like this video, share the link. I want to repeat that so as many people as possible can see this. The information I'm going to give you now is crucial for you in future, for people around the world to understand. This is important information. Maybe in a year or two, you might have forgotten about this. But when you need it, hopefully it'll trigger in your mind and you will be able to do what is necessary if you need to use the information. So thank you very much for being here. Tactical nuclear weapons have been around and have been developed for a very long period of time. One can actually argue that all nuclear weapons are tactical. However, this term that's been thrown around by Vladimir Putin saying tactical nuclear weapons, by the media around the world, tactical nuclear weapons, it's a cop-out to say that if it's used, we don't necessarily get involved. We won't retaliate with other nuclear weapons, because the moment you do that, as Joe Biden so aptly put it, Armageddon, or what people would perceive to be Armageddon, nuclear Armageddon is the effects. And places that are attacked with nuclear weapons will be destroyed heavily. And I'll explain why that happens. I will go into the detail of how a nuclear weapon works in basic terms, so that people understand how a tactical nuclear weapon can be used for various purposes. Okay, so the first thing that you need to understand about a tactical nuclear weapon is that it could be used for a specific purpose. It can be as tiny as the nuclear weapon that is in the thumbnail on this video, very small. Now, a lot of people dispute the fact that the Russians actually produce suitcase nuclear weapons, but you can just imagine, if you look at the ports going into any country, it's so easy to smuggle anything in. In other words, if you can smuggle in drugs, hundreds of tons of drugs into many countries like the US, like the UK, etc., it's easy to smuggle anything like that into South Africa or any other country around the world, as long as there's an ocean around it, or there's a railway going into it, or people can walk with something and they can carry it. You can get a nuclear weapon, a tactical nuclear weapon, into a country if it's being manufactured, if it can be armed and actually detonated. So people have not worried about nuclear threats for a long time, and now you are being bombarded with that information. It's because it will happen. This is why it's been put out. A nuclear weapon will be exploded again in an open environment in the near future. It could happen this year. In fact, there's a very strong possibility that it will. So I just wanted to put that out there for you. And this has been weighing heavy on me for a very long time. So the chances of a tactical nuclear weapon being used this year or in the near future is very good. In fact, I know it will happen in future. So I'm not saying it's going to destroy the planet. Absolutely not. Nuclear weapons will be used in warfare in future. That is guaranteed, because it is part of the globalist elite plan. And the end goal is to get people to submit. In other words, if you're not prepared, if you don't understand the threat, you will just cower and give in, and you will hand over all your freedoms, especially under a global state of emergency due to a nuclear threat. Most people will just hand over everything. And we have to guard against that, especially where I live in South Africa. I want to make sure that the people here do not cower to such a threat, but that people are prepared to face such a threat and survive such a threat, because it's absolutely possible. Welcome to the over 300 people watching now. Those that have just joined us, please go and watch the beginning of this video from the beginning. We are just getting started explaining the threat of tactical nukes, why this information is being spread around the world in the mainstream media. It's to prepare you for something that will take place. So at this stage, there is no stopping the fact that a nuclear weapon will be exploded, either in this year or in the near future, because it needs to be used and as a tactical, they'll call it a tactical nuclear weapon. A nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon, okay? And I'll explain to you just now how it functions and works and what it will actually do. But this word is being used over and over to prepare people so that when it happens, it's not as bad in their minds as a full-out nuclear war. Because a tactical nuclear weapon being used is not going to mean that if Russia is blamed for using a tactical nuke, that the US is going to blast the living daylights out of Russia. It's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that. So they have to prepare people, because all they need to do is instill fear in us. And this is why this live stream is so important. You need to understand what is being done to your mindset and why you need to prepare yourself for that. So please like this video, share this video, the link, so that other people can also watch it, watch the recording afterwards, or even come into the stream. So what will happen is someone from somewhere, some organization will detonate a tactical nuclear weapon. Now, what's that going to look like? Any tactical nuclear weapon will serve a specific purpose in the mainstream media narrative. In other words, they will say that they wanted to knock out a power grid. Now, how will a nuclear weapon knock out a power grid? If you explode a nuclear weapon in the upper atmosphere, that electromagnetic pulse can knock out entire power grids. And you might actually not cause any explosive damage to the ground whatsoever. The nuclear fallout will be in the upper atmosphere. It'll disperse quite substantially. And the fallout will be minimal. In other words, you won't have high concentrations of fallout like you had in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And the other night, I actually spent some time showing this to my kids so that they could see the history of the development of the nuclear weapon and where it was actually used against humans. And that the people there over a 3 or 4 day period didn't even believe that it was nuclear weapons until people started dying from radiation poisoning. And this is something that I will address at length towards the end of this live stream. So a normal nuclear explosion is an explosion, whether it's TNT or anything else that explodes. An arc flash explosion, as I've explained to people, when you get an electrical arc, the air heats up because that plasma that forms is thousands of degrees Celsius, and that air rapidly expands. That's what an explosion is, okay? And it can cause a lot of destruction. It's like a hurricane on steroids. That's basically what it is. And if you have a confined explosion, the force is a lot more than having an open explosion, like in a switching gear yard somewhere where in open air, you will see this massive flash, but there will be no effects afterwards. With a nuclear bomb going off or any other bomb going off, the air gets expanded rapidly and that explosion causes damage. That has nothing to do with radiation that is part of the aftermath of a nuclear explosion. That you need to see as a separate thing. So you need to see a tactical nuclear weapon being used to blow up a bridge or blow up infrastructure that can be used like power stations or whatever. If it's used at a nuclear power station, that would be significant and certainly raise global concern. And there would have to be drastic action taken to stop people from doing things like that. Because no one in the world wants nuclear weapons detonated because of what I'll be getting to later. And that is nuclear fallout, which is a secondary result of that nuclear explosion. Now, make no mistake, if you are close to ground zero or the area where that explosion takes place and you're within the blast zone, if you're very close to that ground zero position, the radiation that comes from that explosion can obliterate you. There can be nothing left of you or any infrastructure anywhere near it. But the rest of the fallout are particulates that can be filtered. You can hide away from it. You can run away from it. You can stay away from it. You can avoid it. But the ground zero explosion, you cannot. So if you are close to any tactical nuclear explosion, the chances of your survival are very slim unless you knew about the explosion beforehand and you actually take shelter, not above ground, but underground. The best place for you to be when a nuclear explosion takes place, or if you see a nuclear explosion taking place and you are far enough away from ground zero, is to go into any kind of underground sewer, rainwater system, sewage system, or anything, and that explosion will do nothing to you. You'll be perfectly safe. And you don't need to be deep underground. You can literally go outside your house. If you can get into a rainwater system there, you'll be fine. If that explosion runs over your head, you'll be okay. The nuclear fallout is a completely different thing. And once you determine what the wind direction is, you will see that fallout spreading in the direction that the prevailing winds blow. As long as you stay out of that fallout zone, you are unaffected by that nuclear explosion. And except for what happens in civil society at that time, you'll be able to survive just fine. So this is important to understand, that there's a difference between ground zero, the nuclear explosion going out in a circle in all sorts of directions. Within the blast zone, you get total destruction within the circle zone. And as you go further out, there's less and less destruction. If you're outside of the zones that are directly impacted by the explosion, your chances of survival are excellent if you stay out of the radiation plume. Now, how much radiation does a nuclear explosion give off? It absolutely depends on the amount of fissile material in the core that exploded originally. If it's a large core, you will have a lot of fissile material in the atmosphere, and that can cause radiation sickness. It can kill you, like it did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So the people that removed themselves from the problem, a lot of them survived up until today. So there's three things you need to remember when it comes to a nuclear explosion and post the explosion, the radiation that you could get from particulates that is in the air, and that is time, distance, and shielding. In other words, how much time do you spend in the area where there's contamination? How far you are from the contamination or the source of contamination? And then how well are you shielded from it? So those three things are what you need to consider. So you can write that down: time, distance, and shielding. So time of that you are being exposed, the distance you are from the exposure, and the shielding you are using. All three of those things you can influence. So if a nuclear explosion takes place and you happen to be anywhere near it, you've survived the initial ground zero explosion, what you need to do is get yourself away. Because even if you are being exposed where you are now, the time of exposure needs to be limited to a minimum. Get as far away from the blast zone as you can. Make sure that you have a distance from the radioactive sources. And that could be, if you're close to the blast zone, your clothes could be contaminated. So if you are running away in your car, on your bicycle, on foot, or whatever, from a zone such as that, your distance from a source could be impacted if your clothing is contaminated. So running away, that time stays with you because your clothes are contaminated. And you need to make sure that you put new clothes on, that you wash yourself, that you clean yourself, to make sure there's no physical particles on you. The other thing you need to do is make sure that you have a mask on you that you could breathe through, to make sure that you could keep particulates out of your airway. So you don't want to inhale or swallow any food or anything during that time. Drink water or anything that could contaminate you. This is very, very important to understand. And make sure that you clean yourself if you can. Even if you have to go into a dam or a river or anything to clean yourself off, you have to do that. Otherwise, time and distance will become a problem because you will take the contamination with you. Then shielding. If you look at various types of radiation like alpha and beta radiation, it takes very little to shield you from that. Even paper can shield you from it, but gamma radiation will penetrate many things. There won't be any neutrons present because you need a sustained chain reaction for neutrons to be present. That only happens during the initial explosion. It causes massive damage from a radiation perspective, and anyone that is close to that will not survive. So unless you are underground, okay, you will not survive. However, the people that are around multiple nuclear explosions can still survive if you use those three things: time, distance, and shielding. If the initial explosion doesn't kill you, you are able to save yourself. And I want people to know this. Go and do further research on radiation sickness and how to keep yourself clean. I'm giving you very basic and simple explanations based on the fact that I was a radiation worker, based on the fact that I'm a nuclear professional. I understand contamination. I have been contaminated in my life, and I have received radiation in my life within limits. And why can you receive radiation within limits? Because our bodies can handle it just fine. This is important to understand. So you can survive it. Thanks to the over 430 people that's watching now. Please like this video, share the link so that more people can get this detail, especially people from around the world. I strongly believe that either within this year or within the near future, a tactical nuclear weapon will be used in the world because the mainstream media, they are preparing people for this. And the reason why they're using the words tactical nuke is because they don't want people to think of all-out nuclear war. They're already preparing people for something tactical. But the moment a tactical nuke is used, governments around the world can say there's a nuclear threat, especially if it's exploded in some random place where no one expected it. To create a worldwide nuclear emergency would be the easiest thing for them to do. And when you have a national emergency in our country, for instance, and it's declared the military is in charge, the military troops are not subject to our civil law. They are subject to military law, and that's why they have killed people during COVID and nothing happens to them. You need to understand what that means. So if the global elite want to get people to submit, to break them down, to get them to a point where they will accept a one world government with a one world leader and with a one world religion, this is an excellent way for them to manipulate people into giving up their freedoms. And I want you to really understand what that means. So thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing the link of this video so that as many people as possible can see and understand why tactical nuclear weapons can be a bigger threat than a huge nuclear war, which is madness. I don't think any world leader would want to actively take part in a massive nuclear war. There will be no winners. It will be a complete mess. So it makes no sense. And this is why people are speaking of tactical nukes. If you look at the Russia-Ukraine situation, there's a lot more at play than Putin and Zelensky. Anyone that believes that that is the only thing at play don't understand what is happening in the world. And you certainly haven't watched my Moments in Time and Question Everything series of videos in the playlist section. So if you have time, go and watch those videos. They are in order and they are numbered. You'll be able to watch the Moments in Time and Question Everything series in the playlist section on this channel and understand why this channel exists and where my knowledge comes from and why I can give you this information. So just understand, when the mainstream media starts to prepare you for something, then something is going to take place. And I believe that we're at a point now where I need to let you know, because it could happen this year. I have told my members a while ago that I feel that something big is going to happen this year. Now, I'm not saying it's a tactical nuclear weapon. It'll have to be a lot bigger than that, because a tactical nuclear weapon could literally be used to disable a railway station. So a tactical nuclear weapon, if it's as tiny as the one in my thumbnail or in a suitcase bomb, you could, for instance, influence a stadium where people are watching a soccer match or something like that. Hollywood has already given you so many scenarios with regards to that. Never ignore what Hollywood shows you or what Netflix shows you. I also want you to keep in mind Operation or Project Coast and understand what that is about. And normally when I speak about this to the members, I use the word toast in the past, but I think we're past that now. I think people need to understand that coast is actively happening among us. And for people that think that things won't happen in future that will physically influence us, I want you to think again. So this brings me to the next thing. I've discussed at length in the past how radioactive material can be used to make people sick, and you won't even know about it. So radioactive sources can be placed in places where you have no idea. You won't even be able to pick it up. You'll be walking past it, sitting next to it, or whatever. If you don't have a Geiger counter, and I'm not saying everyone should go out and buy Geiger counters, you won't know that alpha, beta, and gamma radiation is coming off a source, and it could make you sick. It could make lots of people sick. And I want people to understand that terrorist organizations could do this in the name of the global leaders' plan to literally get people to get so sick and tired of all the threats that they just relinquish their freedoms. And this is the kicker. At the end of the day, this is what the Committee of 300 wants. They want to make sure that people submit to this perfect world where everyone can be controlled, like in these Rob Herzog perfect countries in the blockchain, where everyone will be dictated to. And if the members that read the white paper on the plans for that will see it's a massive elitist pyramid scheme. If you want to call it anything else, then you haven't actually looked at it in detail, because you will have no freedom. And only certain people will become part of this niche organization. Now, it's very easy to use tactical nukes to drive people towards that society, where everyone will be monitored, tracked, and traced morning, noon, and night, where your face will be scanned, where your retinas will be scanned, where your fingerprints will be used with biometrics, etc., to keep us safe. And in the end, you lose your freedoms. You lose your freedoms. And that is what this tactical nuke threat is about. If they create a global nuclear threat emergency, international state of emergency, we will lose our freedoms again. It'll make what was called COVID 2019 or COVID-19, as was used as normal slang, make it look like a Sunday school picnic. And you need to understand how easy it is, because everything is already in place. The nuclear weapons are there. The tactical nuclear weapons are already there. So all they have to do is use it. The time needs to be right. And I told people from the beginning, if Putin really wanted to have control of Ukraine, he could have gone in, knocked out all the power stations. I heard MPs from Ukraine moaning today that 30% of their power has been knocked out. Putin could do that within a couple of seconds, knock out all the power in Ukraine. Why doesn't he do that if he wants to get what he wants to get? It's because there's other plans and other powers at play. This is why. And people need to understand that reality. And you need to understand how it could influence us. And I want you to understand that in South Africa, where I live, where many of you live, that we are not exempt from a tactical nuclear weapon being used. I want to make that patently clear. That the people of Southern Africa, even although we are very remotely removed from where most of these conflicts are taking place, we are not exempt of a tactical nuclear weapon being used. I want you to really think about that. So South Africa would actually be a key place that could be used to literally pull other African nations to their knees. So I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but it's absolutely a possibility. And I have discussed and thought at length about various scenarios of how that could play out, how they would use this to convince the public that a specific event has taken place, and how this could literally play into the secession battle. And I'm not going to go into that detail right now. But once again, thank you to the 488 people that have joined this live stream. I need you to like this, share this with your friends and family so that people can understand what the world is facing right now, so that people understand with all the members in South Africa and across the world on this channel what you could face and how anything is possible when the mainstream media talks about tactical nuclear weapons. And this very easy way to get a global state of emergency that will make COVID-19 look like a Sunday school picnic. Just look at the logic behind global leaders wanting a one world government with a one world leader, with people subject to that in a reduced format. In other words, we don't have 7 billion people in the world anymore. You don't need nuclear weapons to perform that part. You can do that via other means. But to create the threat to get people to submit and subject themselves to that, the nuclear weapon threat is absolutely a perfect method to use to get people to bow their knee and for them to submit their freedom handed over on a platter to these global leaders. So they are very confident in what they say. Klaus Schwab is very confident in what he says when he says that you will own nothing and you will be happy. It's because he understands the global plan. He's a member of the Committee of 300. And because of that, he sat in the meetings where they've discussed in detail, not in a public forum, in Geneva, Switzerland, exactly how they want this played out. Will it go according to plan? When it comes to nuclear weapons, it's going to be interesting to see how the public responds when this does take place, because it will. I can guarantee you that. We will have tactical nukes exploded, if not in this year, in the near future. And it's not such a big deal, but they will make a massive deal out of it. Okay. So the first thing I want to tell you is you can, with TNT, create a much bigger explosion that you could with a tactical nuke. It is absolutely the euphoria, the excitement, the adrenaline attached to a nuclear threat that they will be using. And you can imagine the way they carried on about COVID-19, how they will carry on when a tactical nuke is exploded somewhere. And in fact, it can be exploded in the upper atmosphere. It could knock out some power stations, cause no damage whatsoever, and cause the entire world to go into nuclear lockdown. And you need to think, how will you deal with that? How will you deal with that? Because if it's randomly done in a couple of places strategically, then the threat could happen anywhere. And when I spoke of the pogroms that took place in the past as the Bavarian Illuminati plans played out in Russia, when you attack places randomly, people are confused. They don't know what to do. Their governments don't know what to do. And the people start to attack their governments because they believe that governments need to save them. And this is why I'm going to tell you that no government can protect you against a tactical nuclear weapon. You need to protect yourself. This government certainly is not going to do anything for you in South Africa. Maybe in some of the countries that were really actively involved in the Second World War, they might have underground bunkers. And if you're not at ground zero and the explosion doesn't take place on the ground, it takes place in the air, your chances of survival are excellent. Let me make that clear. I want people to understand that this does not have to be as big a threat as the mainstream media make it out to be. So when you see in the news that a tactical nuclear weapon was used somewhere, See it in context, please. This is what I'm asking you to do. And this is why I've told you what you need to do to mitigate that. If you're not at ground zero, you can survive. And you can explode all the nuclear weapons on this planet. People will survive. Why? Because the global elites have already prepared for that. They already have massive storage facilities. They have massive arc facilities, including in South Africa, where chosen people will be protected and kept for enough time for humanity to survive. So it's an easy way, a very easy way to get people to bow down. And hopefully you won't do that. I really want to thank everyone that joined this live stream. If there's any questions now, I will answer questions with regards to this. So any person, listen, when it comes to nuclear weapons, Biden knows a lot, okay? I'm not a Biden supporter. I don't support politicians, any of them. But he knows a lot about nuclear weapons. I actually made an effort to listen to what he has to say about it. And he knows what he's talking about when it comes to the nuclear threat. Absolutely. He knows exactly what he's talking about. And I haven't heard any rational words coming out of his mouth since he became president, except for the words he used on tactical nuclear weapons. What exploded in Durban last night? Okay, so what happened is there was a massive arc flash. That's what you saw. Because you saw that massive flash, it's an arc. That what you saw is air expanding rapidly, and that bright flash that you're seeing is the arc. So that arc grows, plasma is formed, and because it's in the open, it doesn't blow anything up. So you can go there minutes later and you won't see anything wrong. So people will be very confused. They might think that nothing happened where the arc took place, because you might not see any evidence. If an arc takes place in an enclosed space, that massively expanding air will blow things apart. Make no mistake, inside a breaker or whatever. So in what happened there is not really an explosion. It makes a massive bang. Okay, it's not an explosion the way a conventional explosion takes place. It is a rapid expansion of air, which is what happens in most explosions. It's like a hurricane on steroids, like I said, and it blows things over as that air moves out rapidly. So an arc does something similar, except when the arc grows, you would see that it got brighter and brighter and brighter, and then it just died away the moment the arc stopped, and it self-destructs. So the air ionizes, it causes ozone, so you can actually smell it afterwards. And yeah, I remember back in the day when I was in the control room at Coburg, when we had the total loss of offsite power, the guy at Acacia, told me, the operator at Acacia said that there's massive explosions outside, and it was arcs happening, and you could hear it because there was mist forming, and the lines, the phases were arcing all the time. Now, I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened there, but what you see in that video is an arc flash. Absolutely. Yeah, people, like Marlene says, do not give in to fear. We just received the best advice how to circumvent this. Well, Marlene, it's not about best advice. It's the only advice that we have. It's well-established advice. So it's nothing special that comes from me. I've been trained in everything to do with nuclear contamination, nuclear radiation. So I understand it. And ionizing radiation can kill people, especially if there's enough dose. So use the advice. And if you should ever need it, and hopefully we won't. Hopefully we won't. So I really want you to like this live stream, share this live stream with your friends and family, people that you care about, and share it with people around the world, because this information might help you in the near future. So the main message is don't be afraid. If tactical nukes are used, it's not the end of the world. Even if large-scale nukes are used, it's not the end of the world. Japan was rebuilt. So people can have this irrational fear of something because it's been built up over many years. And you need to ask yourself, why? Why is this massive fear being created around nuclear war? When scientists will tell you that asteroid impacts could have far worse effects, volcanoes spewing ash and lava, etc. It's something that's been built into Hollywood culture and many other things. And many events that happened around the world, like what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And if large-scale nuclear weapons are used in populated areas, that's an horrific thing to do, because many people will die. It'll be unavoidable. But humanity will survive. And that is very, very important. So thank you so much for joining in. Any other questions? Secession. Okay. How far will fallout travel from a suitcase nuke? Paul, you won't have a lot of nuclear material in a suitcase nuke. So it'll be very limited. Fallout can travel around the world from a suitcase nuke. It'll be so diluted that it's irrelevant, if that makes sense. So as the initial explosion happens, all the fissile material dilutes as it travels further and further out. So as that happens, something could be radioactive, like the wick that you put on your gas cylinder. That thing, if you bring a Geiger counter near it, it'll redline because there's that much radioactivity coming off of it. And it's sold in the shop. You hold it in your hand. I tied one onto my gas lamp the other day. I did not expect my hands to fall apart because the amount of radiation is not sufficient to cause that damage. If you go to Paarl Rock in Paarl, that granite is radioactive. We get radiation from the sun all the time. Our bodies can handle radiation in certain quantities. But that's why in the nuclear industry, we have the simple principle as low as reasonably achievable. And then time, distance, and shielding. This is a very simple thing. The amount of time that you're exposed to something, the distance you are from the contaminant, and that is why you need to remember to remove your clothes or anything else you take with you that could be contaminated. You need to get rid of it. And after the Chernobyl nuclear accident, which was a massive steam explosion, ripped the core completely apart, people arrived in nearby towns completely contaminated. They were carrying the contamination with them, although they ran away from the explosion. And when they arrived at other nuclear power stations and the people checked their bodies, it was sky high. I mean, they were carrying lethal doses on them. And the first thing they did is strip them down and scrub them, clean them off. So I'm giving you useful advice here. Okay, this is not something you should take lightly. And it's not just for nuclear contamination, but chemical contamination too, for many other things. So it's really awesome that we almost have 500 people watching in this live stream. Welcome to those of you that have joined later. We've covered most of the details around tactical nukes. We went into a lot of detail. I'm not going to cover a large nuclear war in this live stream. I will cover that in a future live stream with the public. But I believed, and I've told you before, then when I believe the public needs to know something, I will let everyone know. It's not just going to be the channel members. I discuss with the channel members very specific, detailed things. I've spoken to them about how the nuclear threat can be used in the future to create a global state of emergency, which will make COVID-19 look like chicken feed. And they will literally be able to lock people down and use the military to control things. And it's very easy under those circumstances for people to relinquish their freedom, and very easy under those circumstances for a one world government to be created to stabilize this nuclear threat. What easier threat to use than nuclear weapons. And it's going to depend on how people respond to a tactical nuclear weapon being used. They are preparing people for that. In the mainstream media, you see them speak about tactical nukes left, right, and center, morning, noon, and night. Putin has spoken about tactical nukes. It is in the planning, and it doesn't even have to be Putin to use one. It could be anybody, and it'll be the easiest thing to get so many people to bow down and just hand over their freedoms, and Klaus Schwab would be the happiest man in the world. Global state of emergency, very easy to do with a nuclear threat, Tiger. Any other questions, or else we can close down this live stream? It was really awesome to spend time with you. I will try and spend time with the channel subscribers in a live stream once a week when it works out. It's not always going to be the same day. I was considering doing a live stream yesterday, but today was the right time, and I really want to thank you for joining us. JP23Z, hello sir, potassium iodide would stockpile it. You know what potassium tablets do, or iodine tablets, is to saturate your thyroid, and the reason for this is if you get that contamination into you, your thyroid will accumulate it, and it's close to your brain. And then you have a source in your body, literally, that'll irradiate you, and that is the threat. So you can saturate the thyroid with something that's not radioactive beforehand, and what that would do is stop you from being a walking source for your own brain. So go and study that. Read up on these tablets that are available. You know, when we do, when nuclear exercises are done with Kuberg, there's emergency centers in Cape Town that is prepared to receive people with nuclear contamination. They have the tablets available to give to people for the city of Cape Town. So the city of Cape Town, because of the proximity of Kuberg Nuclear Power Station, is probably the most prepared place in the country for something like this. Okay. Creations net, yeah, one miscalculation, and this is something that Joe Biden actually said. He said when you use a tactical nuclear weapon, other people can make misguided mistakes, and then it can just escalate to a point where no one wants to go. So not even Joe Biden believes that Putin wants full-scale nuclear war. And at the end of the day, there's a global plan at play here. You know, Putin was trained as one of the World Economic Forum's global leaders. Connect the dots, people, understand what is going on. And then you will see how things are playing out. That's why I want to forewarn you and tell you that there's a strong chance of a tactical nuclear explosion taking place in this year or in the near future. And it could happen at any stage now. So be prepared for that news, what might happen in the world, socioeconomically, what politicians might do, and look out for those triggers where your freedom gets taken away from you, and where the governments of countries become irrelevant, because this is one of the global plans, that there's no more governments, there's no more borders, that male and female don't exist, there's no more age, there's no more gender, all of these things fall away, and then you're in this perfect Klaus Schwab environment where you get everything, but you know, you're not human anymore, because you can't make choices, you can't even make mistakes. Everything you do will be monitored, tracked, and traced. I don't want to live in that world. Other people might want to live in that world, but that is not a world I want to live in. So I really want to thank you for joining tonight, the more than 500 people. Please go and look at everything that I've put out already. And in this live stream, go and look at the comments, what the people have put out there. Thank you so much for your comments. And thank you for joining in. It's really awesome that people are interested in this. Helen said, I'm 63 and still take iodine tabs. I have no problem with it. Any other questions? I know not what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones, Albert Einstein. Well, Darwin, there's a lot of profound thoughts that should come from that. Absolutely profound thoughts. Just remember, Albert Einstein was one of the people that helped come up with the concepts that made them realize that nuclear weapons are possible. And then it was an Oppenheimer that, of course, created the first nuclear weapon, ran the entire project. And once they saw the first explosion, they knew that they had done something incredible. And then politicians got involved and said, that'll be a nice thing to use in Japan. And the moment the politicians get involved, everything changes. Think about that, people. So thank you so much for joining in. Derek says, Derek is giving a link to the Telegram channel. Tiger says this live stream is simple. Oppenheimer. You can't get rid of that influence. It is a big influence. Tom Creek, you did not discuss distances. Okay, distances. So the distance that you are from something, the further the better. So if you, for instance, look at a neutron through open air can travel a very long distance. It has very high energy. Gamma doesn't travel that far. Concrete will stop it. Water will stop it. So when you're talking about distance, if you're standing 10 meters away from a gamma source, nothing will happen to you. Okay. Typically, the air will be sufficient to stop it. So when I'm in a source, it's a particle that is irradiated and giving off gamma. Alpha and beta hasn't got a lot of energy unless it's physically on your skin. And, alpha particles won't even get through your skin. But you need to get as far away as possible, make sure the contamination is gone. So I'm not talking about very long distances. But remember, when that explosion takes place and that cloud or plume travels with the prevailing winds, you need to know which way it's going. You need to go the other way. Remember that wind directions can change. If it rains, all of that fallout will end up on the ground in the water sources in that area. And you won't be able to use those water sources. You won't be able to use the food or any of those things in that area if the explosion is on the ground. So you need to keep that in mind. So with tactical nukes, if they're not used in the upper atmosphere, you will have to relocate if you live in an area where the fallout actually takes place. You won't be able to stay there, even if the initial explosion didn't break anything. And that brings me to dirty bombs. This is when you use literal fissile material or radioactive material as contaminant. So you can use normal explosives like normal TNT sticks, and you explode fissile material that is highly radioactive, and you contaminate the air. And once you do that, that is nasty, because it's easier to get hold of fissile material like that than to create a nuclear weapon. And any terrorist organization that get their hands on highly radioactive material, like radioactive sources that's used in radiography, is used in hospitals to do x-rays, etc. If you can explode one of those sources in a town, for instance, you can contaminate a large area. And these are things that are driving around our roads all over the country all the time. It is done in a protected way, but you need to be aware of that. I've spoken to my members about this at length. Okay. Hi, Megan. Yes, we're finishing up now, but please go and watch the rest of the video. I think it's very important that you get the information, that you share it with your friends and family. We have 388 likes. If we can get the likes of 500, it'll really be awesome. Ilka's question. Let me have a look quickly. If I can see Ilka's question. Okay, maybe, Ilka, if you could just ask that question again. I'm not finding it in the stream now. Hi, Zander. Conditioner can act like a glue between your hair and radioactive material. Well, many things. So you need to make sure that if you're in this explosion zone, that you clean yourself. You have to clean yourself. This is important. Get any contamination that could be stuck on you, get it off your body. This is vital. Okay. Any way to know if water is contaminated? Unfortunately not, unless you can test the water. If you have a Geiger counter, you can check the water. That's why I've told people over and over and over, make sure that you store water and that you store food that is sealed in bottles that you can take with you. I have so many reasons why I tell people to do things a certain way. And people don't have to do it. I'm asking you to please do it. Yes, Zander, we are talking about this because of, it's not just Putin's threats. It's a fact that the mainstream media worldwide is talking about it. Anyone can do this. There's many countries with tactical nuclear weapons. So any of them could take this action and it will be blamed on Putin. He could take the action himself. Anyone could. At this stage, you could use the nuclear threat to put a global state of emergency in place in the world. It's the easiest way to get people to bow the knee to a global power. Very, very easy. Yeah, we had 7 we had 6 completed nuclear weapons with the 7th one being finalized. And we're the only country that has followed the nuclear non-proliferation treaty and actually taken our nuclear weapons apart, but we still have the fissile material for those weapons. Now, for instance, if you have highly radioactive fissile material and you explode it with conventional explosives, you could contaminate vast areas. So this is a huge threat beside a tactical nuke, and people need to consider that threat. The other threat is using sources like what is used at hospitals to do your x-rays and to actually put that in public places where people can be irradiated. Anyone that is crazy could do something like that. Be aware of that. You won't even know about it. You might just feel slight heat, and then later you might see that your leg is going red, and later black, and later it's rotting off, and later you might end up dying. So people, be aware that fissile material can be used, tactical nuclear weapons can be used to get people to their knees, to bring countries to their knees, to bring cities to their knees. And what I'm trying to tell you is that it's not the end of the world if a nuclear weapon is used. We can survive it. The world can survive it easily. Okay. Karine says people in Durban said they felt radiated just before the blow up. Any explanation? Yes. Okay, so a flash arc like that, the heat radiation is massive. Okay, make no mistake. So if you have a fire, you get radiation coming from that fire. And you don't have to literally feel the fire's heat. The heat radiation will burn you and you'll actually go red. So an arc flash like that, people that live close to the arc flash, they will know about it if they were exposed directly to it. Okay. Plants in the area and so on would typically die within a short space of time. Okay, chemical and biological fallout type bombs also. Nico, absolutely. Now, these are huge concerns for me, much bigger concerns than something that you can see. And people need to be aware of that. I will cover that in a different live stream. I want to end this live stream now. It's been 60 minutes, and I want as many people as possible to still watch this. We're at 423 likes. If we can get the likes up to 500, it will really be awesome. So, yeah, the Valor incident. Zander, I will only speak about the Valor incident to the members on the channel. I've spoken about it before. I won't discuss it in an open forum. Okay. So thanks a lot for joining in, and have an awesome evening. And remember, this is not doom and gloom. You can have knowledge, empower yourself, and then you don't need to fear. If you are close to ground zero, you won't survive it. You won't even know that something happened to you. So don't be worried about tactical nukes and give up your freedom because of it. We need to make sure that we are resilient enough that we take all the actions that we need to be able to survive such a threat, especially a global state of emergency being created because of such a threat. Be aware of that, look out for it, and think, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side of the greater good, where people decide to relinquish their freedom for this global greater good? Or do you believe in individual liberty and believe in freedom of choice for us to remain humans, where you can make mistakes and improve on the mistakes that you make? That is a part of being human, for us to make choices. And the world that Klaus Schwab wants to create is one where choices ceases to exist, although they believe that it's much better for us because we are dumb and he's clever. Well, I can't agree with him. Individual freedom is super important. And this is one of the main reasons why this channel existed, because our freedoms were taken away already globally during the COVID-19, so-called COVID-19 pandemic. And like I said, that was just a tester to see how people respond. And now they are trying to see and measure how people respond to a tactical nuke threat. And it is possible for a tactical nuke to be used in this year still or in the near future. I think it's an excellent way for them to get people to cower and relinquish their freedom. So if they can use it, they will. Thank you so much for watching this live stream. Please like. Let's see if we can get to 500 likes before we shut down this live stream. And thanks to all the members and non-members that have joined us Thursday evening. I will go into a deeper discussion with the members, and I will also discuss Rob Hersof's new South Africa blockchain country in a lot of detail. I will break down exactly how those are the plans that will make people literally beg for systems like that in future, where all their freedoms will be gone. And circumstances like this is how people like that can promote plans where there is no freedom for the world elites, and it's easy to just leave the rest of us behind. Thank you so much for joining in. Good night, everyone. And remember to share love with the people around you. Every single day, try and share love with someone by just recognizing their name if they have a name tag, and just greeting them. And remember to prepare for any and every eventuality. Prepare. Good evening, everyone.